Thanks very much for joining us today. And what we'd like to do is run through the most recent corporate presentation dated January 2019. I think, Darin, if you're going to run through this for us, we'd appreciate that. So if you've got the presentation in front of you, I guess we can kick off on page 2, and maybe you can give us a little bit of a summary before we kind of get into the detail.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. There's a few blanket statements on slide number 2, and maybe I'll preface that with a comment. We own the Madsen Gold Project in Northwest Ontario. It's a historic brownfields production. 2.5 million ounces has been produced out of the Madsen deposit. We acquired it about 4 years ago and have moved very aggressively forward through exploration and now into development. And are on the cusp of releasing a feasibility study, which we will see come out in Q1. That feasibility study will be the last step in de-risking a production scenario at Madsen. Madsen has the benefit of existing infrastructure. There's a mill on site, tailings facility on site. We have underground access, and there's also existing permits, which will require amendment, but are in hand. And so all of that puts us in a position where we can move very rapidly from what was an exploration-focused company into development and into production. With those studies coming out imminently, a lot of what I talk about here will be, more broadly generalizations of the project and our direction moving forward. Bear in mind that all of this will be effectively overwritten in the near future here with the release of the feasibility study.
Of course.
So, the first statement I put there is, my strong belief is there is a real scarcity of quality gold projects out there right now. Madsen is one of a select few with a resource grade of about 9 grams per ton. Really puts it in the top few percentile worldwide for gold deposits by grade. Our goal here is to build a long life mine with attractive economics. We again do benefit from existing infrastructure, which results in what I think will be one of the lowest capital hurdles out there for construction of a new gold operation. And then the last point on this slide, which I think is really important, is that we've seen significant growth in the resource. We do intend also to update our resource here in the coming weeks, and we think that we'll be laying out a picture that really shows that Madsen is a scalable project. The feasibility study will underpin the economics of a production story moving forward. But on top of that, we think that with the resource growth that we've seen, the ability to continue to grow resources through exploration, and some of the satellite discoveries that we've made over the last several years will allow us to paint a picture of an operation that's not only long-lived, but has the opportunity to continue to grow beyond that life or show some expansion during mine life to improve the production profile.
Okay, thanks for that summary. I guess we should kind of get into the meat of the project here and try and understand a little bit more about the specific projects itself and the management team and your plans.
Yeah. So Madsen Gold Project is in Northwest Ontario. Current resource sits at 1.74 million ounces at 8.7 grams per ton in the indicated category. 300,000 ounces approximately at 7.9 grams per ton in the inferred category. Situated in Red Lake, Ontario, this is a historic mining camp that's seen gold production over the last 9 decades. It's been nearly 30 million ounces of gold that's come out of the Red Lake area. We, as I indicated, have completed preliminary economic assessment, which suggests robust economics for the Madsen project. And about a year ago, we initiated a feasibility study, which is set to come out in the coming weeks. On slide number 5, about 256 million shares outstanding. We are fully funded to complete our feasibility program and move the project towards a production decision.
Just to interrupt, so it says here it's a definitive feasibility study that's coming out.
That is correct.
Right. Okay. Sorry, wasn't sure. Okay, and that's coming out Q1, so imminently.
It is imminently, yes.
Have you seen the data? Are you optimizing it at the moment? When do you expect to actually make the announcement?
Yeah, so we're targeting making that announcement, as soon as we effectively can. it'll likely come out in the next next month or so.
Right.
We are getting near the tail end. All of the heavy lifting, so to speak, has been completed, and we really are in the kind of final stages of putting the economics together and reviewing.
Again, back on page 3, I know you have touched upon it, but just to help me understand, you've got a lot of infrastructure in place already. I mean, you've got a mill, you've got a tailings facility in place. I mean, was this part of the acquisition cost, one presumes?
Yeah, that's correct. So Madsen is a permitted mine. Was acquired, as I said, 4 years ago, and came with an existing mill. It's a 600 ton per day mill. That was it's not the original mill that was used to produce 2.5 million ounces of gold at Madsen, but was brought in the late 1990s when our predecessors was looking at a restart.
Yeah.
So that is in place. Tailings management facility was part of the historic operation, has been expanded and improved since that time. And then we have underground access both through an existing shaft, which goes down to just over 4,000 feet or 1,200 meters, and a ramp, which we've been active in over the last 2 years in continuing to explore and completion of a bulk sample that we.
I'm guessing there that the value of that's built into your, however you're valuing the company at the moment. So how did you value all of that existing infrastructure?
Yeah, when you look at the infrastructure itself, if you were to value it in today's dollars, you're looking at something that's likely well over $200 million in existing infrastructure. The benefit to us, obviously, is that the sunk cost. And so when we look at the preliminary economic assessment that we put out in September of 2017, it showed that we could restart the operation with a initial capital cost of 51 million Canadian, which is it's extremely light. And the reason it's light is again because of that existing infrastructure. So we're not out to build a new mill or a tailings facility or put a shaft in place here. Those things are already there and available to us.
Got it. Okay. And also the other thing you touched upon there was you said it was fully permitted. So the entire project is just at Marsden, or all projects are fully permitted and licensed?
Yeah. So Madsen is permitted as a mine. It's the key umbrella permits that we have in place are environmental compliance approval for air and noise, and for what they call industrial sewage works, which is really your mill and tailings facility. Those permits were issued during the last time that Madsen was operational. And so as we put out our feasibility study and an updated mine plan, we'll need to go and amend those permits. Right. And so that work has commenced. It is a fairly straightforward regulatory process, and there is no environmental assessment that is anticipated as part of that process.
So there's no delays anticipated. It's built into your planning.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm moved on to page 4 here, and this is kind of one of the more important pages for me. So in terms of our investment strategies, is understanding who we're getting to bed with. The board and the management team. Can you kind of run through that in some level of detail so we understand who's actually doing what, where the value's coming from, each of them, what you've tasked them to do?
Sure, I'll do that. I'll start first with myself. I am a geologist by background. I have been in mining my entire career. A good part of that was with Placer Dome. Started in exploration, geology, moved on to mine geology. I did work in the Red Lake area, so I was underground beat geologist at the Red Lake mine, and ultimately transitioned to be chief geologist for that operation. So intimately familiar with the camp, and I have had the opportunity through my career to take projects right from exploration through development, study, and ultimately into operation. So a fairly well-rounded background. Across the group here, you'll see a very strong foundation in geoscience. I stepped down to Phil Smerchansky, our VP exploration. He was a consultant to Goldcorp in the Red Lake area. Again, is very knowledgeable with respect to the mineralized systems in place at Red Lake. Chris Lee, our chief geoscientist, worked with Mark O'Day, who's on our board with Frontier Gold, and is also a very strong structural geologist. In fact, when you look at Mark O'Day and Chris Lee, they both participated in Rob McEwen's Goldcorp Challenge back in the day. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Of course, yes. I'm not that young.
Yeah, so Mark came in second place, and Chris Lee was the semi-finalist in that competition. Really, that was designed and and put forward to make a new discovery in the Red Lake Mine, and ultimately led to the discovery of the high-grade zone in that deposit. So very strong foundation in geoscience. Ken Donner was brought on about 2 years ago to really lead the charge to development and operations. Ken has 30 years of experience. The first 15 or so years was in operating mines exactly like this, underground, high grade. And the last 15 years of his career has been more centered around building mines and bringing them into production, which is exactly where we're at. So he's the right person to bring this forward. More broadly speaking, I've talked a little bit about the group. We fall, effectively under the Oxygen Capital umbrella.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of names there. So both Sean and Mark are part of that group, are they?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Sean, Mark, Dylan McInnes. It was put together by Mark when Frontier Gold was acquired by Newmont in 2011, and really meant to incubate companies, to bring new ideas, and look to drive value using our what I would call our specialized skill sets. Yeah. And really, at the foundation of the group is looking for projects that have significant data sets where we think there's real value that can be effectively mined out of that data to drive projects forward towards production. Great examples of that would be Frontier Gold and Long Canyon, which was acquired by Newmont. True Gold built up the Burkina Faso Karma project and was acquired by Endeavour a couple of years back. True North Nickel was acquired. So a real success story of acquiring good projects, strong data sets, applying geoscience, building it up, and either in the case of True Gold, building a mining company and being acquired, or ultimately being acquired as we transition into the construction of an operation. So a real strong umbrella support, if you will.
Darin, so just in terms of this team here, so at the moment you're kind of positioning yourselves, you're still exploratory. Obviously you've got a DFS coming out which gives you some indication of how you move forward, but the team currently is very technically orientated. Who in this team is sort of managing the kind of financial component? Obviously market cap's good, but I guess you're gonna have to go out to market at some point. Who's managing the financial component?
Well, I mean, ultimately that rests on me, but very strong support through our board and then Sean Tetzlaff, who's our CFO. We've been very successful in a difficult market in raising funds to move the project forward. And, I speak for Pure Gold in saying that, but also, again, more broadly speaking, the group has shown the ability repeatedly to attract capital to move projects forward. I think that really reflects on the team, on the group and its history, and then ultimately on the project itself. Strong jurisdiction, high grade, and potential for good economics moving forward. Really has enabled us to raise those funds to move forward.
Okay, and I guess for now, this is the team. As the company evolves, you're gonna, I guess, have to bring new people, new skill sets in, but that's not for now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just again to reiterate, in terms of my background, I've operated mines in both underground and open pit. I've brought properties right through from exploration through into feasibility, construction, and ultimately operations. Ken Donner, that's his entire career. When you look at our board, Rob Pease was global manager for projects worldwide for Placer Dome and has seen the transition of multiple projects across the world from exploration through into development and construction and ultimately operation. So yeah, we've got a pretty strong foundation here. We will need to build out the team as we move forward here and bring in ultimately the mine management team that's going to drive the operation on the ground. And those efforts have been initiated.
Excellent. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, I'm just turning through to page 5. Again, I know you touched upon some of this, but if you can sort of help me understand the key shareholders a little bit more. Obviously, the management director is sitting at 3.5%. Strategic shareholders, they would be who?
Yeah, so we've got a few strategic shareholders in there. AngloGold Ashanti is the largest. So senior producer, they own 14.9% of the company. Yep. And have been a strong supporter from day one, effectively. Rob McEwen, so founder of Goldcorp. Rob McEwen was really effectively the lead shareholder when we put together a financing package to acquire Madsen, and he currently holds about 7%. And in there as well, you would see Goldcorp, who participated in a couple different financings to help us advance our exploration efforts over the last couple of years.
So there's the strategic and the institutional
I
guess, Canadian focused?
Both Canadian and European. There is a couple London institutions in there, and we've also got some American institutional ownership. That number is probably low. This is effectively what reports, but we know a few others that that would bring that number up a little bit higher.
Okay, and does that split also apply to your retail? Because looking at that, it's quite a high retail following. Is that Canadian, European?
Yeah. So you see a combination of dominantly Canadian and European in terms of the retail ownership. Very strong support in Canada, particularly here in Vancouver, with some key shareholders there that have significant positions in the company.
Got it. Well, just help me out here. I should look it up, but if you can help me out. So in terms of volume, daily volume and liquidity, what's that looking like?
Yeah, we're averaging about 250 to 300,000 shares a day.
And that's retail driven?
Largely retail driven, correct.
And then a couple of the other numbers here, which kind of just help me. So market cap at the moment, roughly 165 million. You've got about $7 million of working capital. That's going to take you through to when?
That'll take us through to effectively a production decision. So all the way through our ongoing efforts to complete the feasibility study, update the resource, and effectively the next thing will be a production decision, and then ultimately we would look to finance the project to move it into production.
So that'd be kind of Q2, are we saying?
You're looking at mid 2019.
Excellent. And analyst coverage, you've got quite a few names on there, certainly all the big boys. So you're definitely very well followed. So should we get into Madsen Gold Project proper?
Sure. Yeah. So on slide 6, we've got a location map. Again, Red Lake, Ontario, very strong mining jurisdiction. Red Lake has been effectively built upon underground mining. Again, nearly 30 million ounces of gold has come out of there. Madsen historically has produced just under 2.5 million ounces at a grade of close to 10 grams per ton. And you can see again the resource numbers there. We hold a large land position on the south end of the camp centered on Madsen, about 47 square kilometers. It's all patent land, which means that we own both surface rights and the mineral rights, and that really gives us a lot of flexibility from a permitting standpoint, in fact, of moving things forward, both on the exploration and development side.
Yep. I mean, what I can see clearly here is you're, one, in the right postcode, two, the infrastructure around you, not only roads, but the airport there, and I'm guessing power, water, skilled workers, all in abundance.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see Highway 618 bisects right through our property. We've got paved highway access straight to the gate. We've got power, to the gate. It is a historic production site, and so all of those facilities are in place. And then importantly, being a mining district, access to skilled labor, the kind of things that we'll be looking for from an underground mining perspective are all locally available. I'll talk in a moment about our underground bulk sample. We engaged Dumas mine contractors to assist with that. Nearly everybody on that team was Red Lake sourced, and so that labor is available in the area.
Flicking over to page 7 here.
Yeah, so 7 really just lays out a path moving forward. The feasibility study will define a production scenario for Madsen. Again, as I said, the last step in really de-risking that operating scenario. Scalability is really important. We've made several discoveries over the last several years: Russet South, Fork, Wedge. Each of those have or will have resources attached to them in the near future. And Russet South, Fork, and Wedge will not be incorporated in the feasibility study. They're earlier stage, but we see the real opportunity there to demonstrate a path to continue to grow those resources and then also wrap some operating parameters around them and ultimately incorporate them into the mine plan. So allowing us to not only potentially extend mine life, but even look at increasing mill throughput and have an impact on the production profile. Beyond that, we will continue to explore. It is a large land package, and given the success that we've had, we believe that there's a real value driven there.
Got it. So just coming back to the scalability component, what are you indicating at the moment the production numbers will be? How many ounces per year?
So we put out a preliminary economic assessment in 2017 that utilized the existing mill and the resource from Madsen. It showed an average, over 14-year mine life, we showed an average of about 70,000 ounces per year. peaked out at pretty close to 100,000 ounces per year. The limiting factor there really is the existing mill. So our goal in that study was to minimize initial capital. We used the existing mill. That was the outcome. I can't really talk too much about where we're at right now with the feasibility study, given that it is nearing completion, and we'll see what that looks like in the very near future.
Yeah, because I think the sorts of numbers that people would be liking to see would be typically 100,000 ounces a year with whatever life of mine attached to that, and whatever large number of resource attached to that as well. So you're obviously sitting around 2 million at the moment, 70,000 annual production, and I guess you're talking about scalability, you'd be looking to increase that.
Yeah, so really, our goal here is to demonstrate exactly that. We'd like to show a long life mine here that has the potential to produce, between 100 and 150,000 ounces over that period. We'll have the feasibility study out. Talked about an updated resource coming out. The one thing I haven't talked about is we also intend to put out a preliminary economic assessment on the heels of the feasibility study. That seems a little bit unusual, but that PEA is going to be centered around our satellite zones, if you will, Russet South, Fork, and Wedge. It'll be the first-hand look at how we might mine those, what the capital and operating costs around those might look like, and what kind of production profile we could attain from those satellite zones.
Presumably also the timing and costs associated with that. There's going to be a certain amount of money available. The CapEx will be expended a certain way. So the satellite projects, not necessarily happening anytime soon, but you want to understand what the economic benefits could be going forward.
Yeah. It is, again, we do have a real opportunity here given the infrastructure we have in place and where these deposits are situated. Because we are limited by how we present it, given that the PEA incorporates inferred resources, it will be shown as an end of mine life extension. And so when we put that PEA out, we'll be showing Russet South, Fork, Wedge mining occurring subsequent to mining at Madsen. What we'll be doing is continue to do work from an exploration standpoint to convert inferred to indicated. We'll continue to do some upfront engineering work with the goal of bringing that up earlier into the mine life. And that would be done in conjunction with an expansion of the existing plant potentially. And so that would be the driver here. This is not, those satellite zones are not distal. They're fairly close to the existing mill. They're easy to access. The infrastructure to put them into production won't be significant. And from a permitting standpoint, we'd be using the existing mill, the existing tailings facility. So really we'd be looking at permitting dewatering and ultimately the underground access for those zones.
Darin, remind me, what's the mill capacity?
600 tons per day.
Okay.
Importantly, our existing permit for the mill allows for 1,200 short tons, or about 1,089 tons per day metric. And so there is room for expansion potentially within that existing permit.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Okay, then I'm looking at actually it looks like a Google Earth map of the infrastructure.
Yeah, looking down over top there of the infrastructure, just to highlight the road coming through, we can see a power line into the mill, mill situated next to the shaft, tailings management facility on the top end of this image, and on the bottom you have the portal and ramp. So very compact site, all of those key components are in place. You're also seeing the town of Madsen there, which was put in place to support the mine, and an area that we continue to draw employees from.
So, I mean, the interesting thing about obviously the IRR must have been significantly enhanced by the infrastructure in place, not to mention less capital required and clearly, quicker returns as a result. So it's not to be understated, the importance of what you picked up there.
No, absolutely. There's a couple of things I would highlight there. You're exactly right in terms of the importance of the infrastructure allowing us to demonstrate a high internal rate of return. What it also does for us, the combination of the infrastructure and the permitting that we have in place, allows us to start talking about moving from feasibility into production in a very rapid time frame. And so, when I look at a high level picture of our plan moving forward, feasibility study comes out in Q1, we make a production decision. We look to bring project financing to finance the mine moving forward. Many permits come into place, and we see ourselves as being in a position where, if not, December of this year, certainly Q1 of next year, we would like to see those mills turning and production commence at Madsen. So it's when you look at the world and it's becoming longer and longer from discovery through delineation, permitting, feasibility, and ultimately construction. That window is growing to be a multi-year time frame. Given we've got those key components in place, we're talking about something that happens in an 18-month window.
Yep. Okay. Understood. I'm going to skip through to page 10, where you just talk a little bit more about the DFS coming up, but I guess you've covered some of this already in terms of it'll be out in the next 4 to 6 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, exactly right. So most of the heavy work has been done, all the geotechnical work. We'll talk a little bit more about test mining on the next slides. Yeah. Trade-off study has been done. The metallurgical flow sheet has been finalized, and all the operating and capital parameters around that is done. So we really are on the tail end of the study and anticipate it out shortly.
And so, just for investors watching, what does that mean for them? What does it mean for the company in terms of value created or certainty for you in terms of your decision making?
Well, it really is a key milestone in the evolution of the project. Getting the feasibility study out will really tighten the parameters around how we're going to mine the deposit, what the capital will be, what the operating costs will be, and allow us to make a decision on moving to production with some certainty. We have completed a PEA, and that gave us a good sense of the robustness of potential economics here, but this takes it to the next level. So it is a key milestone in really a transition from what was an exploration company into what will be a producing company.
And again, another one, it's just, again, for helping people understand in terms of your time zones here, moving from a DFS eventually onto BFS, where the economic component has a better degree of certainty for them, for the company, and for investors. What's the time frame between DFS in your case through to BFS, and what happens in the interim period?
Yeah, in this particular case, the terms are somewhat interchangeable. Definitive feasibility study is the final study that we will do. We have engaged Endeavor Financial in the middle of last year to help us work on the financing side, and we've got a number of parties that we've reached out to that are waiting for the conclusion of the study, and ultimately, the engineering parameters and economic parameters that we see out of this feasibility study were brought into a financing model and allow those prospective financiers to put forward proposals to help us move the project forward.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. And then I think we're on to the page you mentioned earlier in terms of the bulk sample from last year and what that's told you.
So slide number 11, we've got this is a plan map. It's an image that shows each of those polygons, if you will, is a round that's been blasted underground. And so you can see how we advance through there. The west stoping area and east stoping areas are two areas that we identified from our preliminary economic assessment that had potential for mining. The anticipated grade from those two areas was 9.5 grams per ton. These were not selected because they were the best stoping areas from the study. They were selected because they were the closest to the ramp that existed. So we drove the ramp 87 meters. We drifted along the bottom of the west stoping area and east stoping area. The colors that reflect grade, with the red color being about 4 grams per ton. And ultimately we did very well. As you can see on the next slide, the test mining in the west and east stoping areas delivered 14% more ounces than we predicted from the resource. And that really was driven by grade. We achieved a grade of 10.9 grams per ton at a 4 gram cutoff versus the 9.5 that we expected. The tons were within 1%. So, I was extremely pleased with the outcome of that study, seeing that the tons matched up almost perfectly, and we saw a little bit better grade than we expected from the resource. The hanging wall area that we saw in the last stope was a surprise. We had modeled that in the geological model. It showed a grade that ran about 2.5 grams per ton. And as we advanced towards the east stoping area, we were testing the walls with the bazooka core rig, and we tested that area, and we started to see better continuity with closer space drilling. We started to see some improved grades with closer space drilling, and ultimately we went in there and mined the area. And that area produced 440 ounces of gold from 1,575 tons at a grade of 8.7. So now when you look at the broad picture there, from what we expected when we went in to what we actually achieved through mining, we returned 46% more tons, 8% higher grade, and 56% more ounces. So really a fantastic outcome from our test mining program, demonstrating that the resource model holds well in the areas where we anticipated to mine it. There will be opportunities potentially for additional mineralization with closer space drilling. Ground conditions were fantastic, and our average mining width of 5.3 meters is a good width underground, which allows you to contemplate different mining methodologies.
Got it. So grade doesn't seem to be the issue here. What you're looking to do is prove up that scalability.
Yeah, so we really wanted to demonstrate a few things when we set out to conduct our test mining program. One was have a first-hand look at ground conditions, which again are excellent. We wanted to demonstrate that we could follow mineralization underground and establish a good grade control program, which we did achieve. And then we wanted to have really a reconciliation between the two models, the resource model, which predicted what we mined, and what we actually saw from mining. This did also allow us the opportunity to test some other areas, and we saw some benefit out of that. And while we can't say that it'll apply to the entire mine, we certainly think there will continue to be opportunities as we mine to look for those types of zones. Okay,
so you think investors should really take note of this process that you've been through, because it's potentially quite indicative of what's to come.
I think this was again a very key de-risking exercise. The fact that we achieved a grade of 10 grams per ton underground in the first mining in the area, that it reconciles fairly well with what we predicted from the resource model, and that the ground conditions and mining widths are great. It should all bring a little bit more confidence to the plan that we move forward with.
Okay, great. So I'm just flicking over to page 13 where you talk about some of the catalysts. I think a lot of these things you've already covered off with regards to the resource update and the DFS, and obviously a production decision off the back of that. I think you've also covered off the fact that you continue to explore. Again, maybe spend a little bit of time in terms of who in the team is going to be focused on delivering this scalability component, because I think that seems to be the thing which will define you as a company. If you can continue getting these grades, and achieve the larger resource numbers, then potentially a very, very exciting business.
Yeah, so that truly will be a team effort with the entire group focused on showing the scalability and growth. As we agree, we think that's one of the important drivers for value for the company moving forward. On the exploration side, Phil and Chris and the team are going to continue to be focused on growing resources and converting inferred to indicated. And so the PEA that we have coming out in Q1 2019 around the satellite zones will give us a better guide as to where those efforts should be focused, and how we can continue to bring those into a category which could translate into a feasibility study ultimately, and a path towards expansion. More broadly speaking, we continue to bring other exploration targets forward. A lot of that work's happening in the background, but there's about 20 different drill-ready targets across the property that we will continue to work on. With the mining team in place, we'll continue to transition that information across so that we can work on ensuring we have the timelines put in place to bring that material up as soon as possible into our mine life.
Right. Whilst managing your cash flow and obviously bringing in money as and when it's required. Okay, a couple of quite exciting charts here on page 15 and 16. Page 15 seems like it gives an indication of where everything is. Do you want to kind of run us through that at a high level?
Yeah, so you see our property outline there. There's again, broadly speaking, the property's got two halves to it. The right hand half is in yellow, the left half is in green. It is the left side of this map that is the focus for us. That is the host of the deposits and the host of the deposits across the camp. Each of those yellow dots on there reflects one of these targets that I previously introduced, and as I said, we continue to move those towards drilling, and think there's opportunities to continue to grow the resource. there's a red line that crosses this map that's got the label section, and that is a cross section across the property, which is the next slide on slide 16. And really what we've done on 16 is we've brought all the kind of the key deposits onto one section. Madsen itself sits on the right-hand side. This is the focus of the feasibility study. You can see a depiction of the shaft going down through the deposit and the ramp there. Deeper down, you see something called the 8 zone.
That looks really interesting. I mean, I guess, is that in any of the numbers that you've declared so far?
Yeah, the 8 zone forms part of the resource and will be part of the mine plan from the feasibility study. What is interesting about it, in fact, what's interesting about this entire depiction here is that, you know, it's open. Madsen's open to depths below the bottom of this page. The 8 zone is open both up and down plunge. And in fact, when you look at Russet South at surface on the left side of this map, one of our satellite zones, that really was discovered initially by pointing the 8 zone to surface, getting out on the ground, seeing some of the elements geologically that we wanted to see, and drilling, and now it's developed into a resource. There's a gap there of about 1 to 1.5 kilometers that is poorly tested and remains a focus for us in terms of trying to generate additional resource.
Okay.
The 8 zone is important because it is higher grade. When you look at the resource itself, overall, we talked about a 9 gram per ton resource. The 8 zone in an indicated category pushes closer to 20 grams per ton. So you can see it's an important part of of the future of the project moving forward.
That's interesting. I mean, again, just on page 15, you talk about robust geological framework. I mean, is this data you've inherited or you've gathered or a bit of both? I mean,
yeah, so it's the data we inherited, and using that data and again a strong geoscience focused approach to develop models that not only explain what had been mined previously, but also identify opportunities for expansion. And one of the keys that's come out of that, and I'll be able to show that in a slide that's coming here. One of the keys that really came out of that is that, and this is a breakthrough that we had about 2.5 years ago, is a model that really defines Madsen as a structurally controlled deposit and allows us to trace those structures across stratigraphy into different areas. We've been testing that with drilling, and in particular Fork and Wedge to the kind of the bottom half of this plan map on the previous slide really do they're the fruit of the model, so to speak. They're discoveries that are based on that model, and we think it'll continue to lead to additional discoveries.
Interesting. Okay, who's managing that charge?
That'd be Phil. So it's Phil Smirchansky and his team.
Great. Okay, and then again, going through to page 17, again touching upon the growth and scalability component, which I think is a very important part of your story.
Yeah. So on this is a plan map. Again, we've zoomed in. Red is current resource, and the orange area is an exploration target that currently has no resource, but that will be incorporated into the upcoming resource. And this really does start to put that picture together. The feasibility study is focused on Madsen, which is the larger mass of red mineralized material in the middle right portion of this image. If we trace that towards the bottom of the image, we get into an area that's labeled Fork. That's one of the satellite deposits, and that really is an extension of those same structures that control Madsen. You keep following that down to the bottom of the image into the oranger area there called Wedge, and again, it's tracing those structures made a discovery at Wedge. Wedge has been an area that we started drilling a little over a year ago and have had great success defining it across a 1 kilometer strike length and down to a depth of 500 meters, and we're really excited about the opportunity to continue to grow resource there. On the left side, kind of standing alone, is Russet South, and that's that up plunge projection of the 8 zone at depth, and the gap between the main mass of Madsen and Russet South is an area that we'll target for additional growth. So understanding what's controlling mineralization, putting the model together, recognition that they're genetically and spatially linked has allowed us to properly target and increase our success rate on growing resource.
Okay, and I guess, as you say, Wedge and Start, not currently included in the resource, but potential there is something that you're excited about. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So the next slide we're going to look at is a 3D depiction of this image. And imagine, if you will, you're standing on the north arrow there, and you're looking back towards Madsen. And this really puts that that common mineral system into place. Madsen's seen 2.5 million ounces of production, and we have a 2 million ounce effectively resource. So you're looking at 4.5 million ounces in this window. And you get a clear picture that Madsen, Fork, and Wedge are all related as part of the the same mineral system here. 8 zone sits of depth connecting back potentially into the Fork and Russet South area. It's all open. There's a lot of white space on here, and you get a sense of that from some of the drill holes we've highlighted. Down at the bottom left there, AD 1101, 14.3 grams over 2 meters. It's about 750 meters below any mining that's ever occurred at Madsen, about 2.1 kilometers vertical. We drilled a hole a little over a year ago, 456, 34.6 grams over 4.3 meters. That sits 200 to 250 meters below any mining at Madsen. And then again at Sterrett, we've got 34 over 11. At Wedge, we've got another strong result towards the bottom of Wedge. All of that just really paints the picture that not only are we continuing to make discovery by extending laterally near surface, but there's real strong depth potential here to continue to grow resources and demonstrate the longevity of a potential mining scenario.
Got it. So you're quite excited by this diagram. Clearly, oh, yeah. You're seeing a lot of potential, and you seem to be hitting gold wherever you drill. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Well, we're looking at the things that really get me excited. This is a big mineral system. It's 5 kilometers across in strike length here. I talked about what's been mined, what's in current resource. It's a large system. It's been sparsely tested to date, and a lot of room to grow. I'm excited about putting Madsen back into production, generating cash flow, and then being able to demonstrate this expansion through additional exploration work and additional development.
Well, I guess that's the point everyone kind of wants to get to. They want to understand, the drivers for the business. Getting to cash flow is always important. Getting to production clearly to do that. Tell us about page 19.
Yeah, so this really just demonstrates the low capital nature of the project. As we talked about, because of the infrastructure that's in place, $51 million in the PEA to build a new mine at Madsen, and generates 47% on a after-tax IRR basis. It really stands alone with respect to capital and return on investment. Obviously, this is about to be overwritten by the feasibility study, but it paints a nice picture here with respect to our peers. And so it really does, highlight the uniqueness of the project: high grade, strong returns, and low capital with a short time frame to move back into production. And then beyond that, as we've discussed through the presentation, the ability to demonstrate growth through exploration, which we've already started to demonstrate with the satellite discoveries that we've made.
Right. So what have you got to try and achieve in 2019 to be able to deliver success for investors?
Yeah, so I think right now the key thing that everyone's looking towards is the release of the feasibility study. That will be the last step in de-risking a production for Madsen, and ultimately that'll be a driver for the year: project finance, construction, and looking to put ourselves in a position where we are generating cash flow in 2020. Beyond that, we do not intend to stop exploration. We'll continue to show growth in resource, ultimately to layer on and achieve our goal, which is demonstrating to the market the potential to produce 100 to 150,000 ounces over a 10-year plus mine period. And I think that ultimately is going to drive real value for Pure Gold shareholders moving forward. The potential for good economics, a cash flow generator, and longevity with growth, all of which together will really enable us to realize the value which we think we should be showing today.
Yeah, those would be great messages to deliver this year for sure. Okay. Darin, thank you very much for running through that. There's some very, very strong and confident messages coming through there. I guess we all wait to see what the DFS delivers and what your decisions are off the back of that. It would be great to kind of stay in touch and obviously see if some of these things which you're hoping to deliver get delivered, and keep our investor base up to date with what's going on.
Fantastic, Tom. I really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to giving an update once we get some of these messages out.
Fantastic, Darin. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Cheers. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much for watching our video. We do aim to give you informed and intelligent information with which to make your investment decisions. So if you liked what you just saw, please give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see more insightful, in-depth, honest and unbiased interviews, then please click the subscribe button. So thanks again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.